delivery and do away with Saturdays
delivery. Yeah, Saturday delivery.
In addition to the rate increases. We'll hear more about that later.
Postal unions will never allow.
I know, the letter carriers,
Sadly,
yes. Yeah. This super tanker converted into an oil skimmer in the Gulf is sucking crude off the top of the water. It was an idea that our next guest has been suggesting for the last 2 months. John Hofmeister is former CEO of U.S. operations at Shell Oil, founder and CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy, and, of course, the author of Why We Hate the Oil Companies. John, welcome back. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Carl.
We've seen the boat's getting a lot of attention on a lot of the network evening broadcasts. Retrofitted, right? Very large. Is it too little, too late, or is it going to make some? Is it going to add some value?
Well, I think it will add some value, but it's still too little, too late. You know, for months, some people have been saying we have not achieved the scale that this cleanup deserves. I continue to argue that this industry knows about size and scale, and that we should have had this kind of a skimmer out there a long time ago. We should also have additional super tankers that can suck oil out of the ocean. If that oil is sucked out of the ocean, then it doesn't end up on the beaches. I have to tell you, Carl, if this was California and there was a blowout off the coast of California, I have a feeling there would be a flotilla of super tankers making sure the oil didn't hit the coast. This is the Gulf Coast, which is not supportive of the current administration, and I think it is suffering because of that.
You think the response has been politically altered?
Absolutely. I think the response is totally political. Look, there's nobody totally in charge. Why haven't we appointed somebody to be completely in charge to cut through all the bureaucracy, to make the Coast Guard and BP and local government work together? It's everybody for himself. And, you know, now we have the moratorium. The moratorium is the so-called boot on the neck of. You know, it's the boot on the neck of the industry, and the American consumers are going to be paying through the nose for gasoline in about 2 years when the effects of this moratorium are felt.
Well, John, let me ask you one other. Now, I'm not going to call it a conspiracy theory, but maybe you'll speak your mind on this. I keep seeing again and again from a lot of people writing in that, what is it, the Jones Act, that we had been offered a lot of help from a lot of different countries for skimmers. And the reason that we didn't accept was because they wouldn't be union shops on the waters, that we wouldn't allow anyone from European countries over here because the unions paid the way to get into the White House, to get into the dance, and now they're going to dance. So that's why we didn't accept that. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I think we haven't heard any official word from the White House on a waiver for the Jones Act. Now, this supertanker that's out there with the skimmer is a Taiwanese ship. I don't know who's crewing it at this point. So I think there's some back and forth on whether the Jones Act applies or doesn't apply.
But would that be a consideration where that we would say no to cleaning up the oil because we'd be worried about rubbing the unions the wrong way?
Well, I've been saying that for some weeks.
You have.
That there has been a reluctance to just put a total waiver on the Jones Act. It seems to be selective.
But shouldn't BP have been the one out in front saying we need this super skimmer from day one? I mean, I agree. You fault the Obama administration for the fact that, sort of they allowed BP to take the lead on this for far too long. But, I mean, where were the BP executives when you were making these arguments?
Well, they've been looking at it in terms of what they told me, but looking at doing it are two different things. I think BP, quite frankly, is better focused on the relief well, better focused on controlling the flow. The water belongs to the nation. The water belongs to the Coast Guard. And so the real decisions on the cleanup, once the oil is in the ocean, is a governmental decision more than I believe it is a BP corporate decision.
But you believe because it's not the backyard of Pelosi and Boxer, but rather the backyard of Haley Barbour, Rick Perry, Bobby Jindal, that help didn't come when it was able earlier on.
It has been a piecemeal recovery. Officials come from Washington, they walk the beach, they leave. But nobody's in charge. That's the whole point. They've been talking about that for a long time. When nobody's in charge, that means, it's just chaos down here. And whether it's shallow water or deep water, the future of drilling in the Gulf is very much at issue now, and that's going to be quite worrying, not just for this region, but frankly for the whole nation.
I just think that you do yourself, I mean, I think you've been extraordinarily prescient and pushing for a very important issue that will help the people of the Gulf, and I think you do your argument a disservice by, talking about a conspiracy theory, but that the Democrats are somehow not going to help the folks in the Gulf. I mean, Lord knows we had problems with Katrina, and, all of those politicians were well-oriented towards the Bush administration. This is an enormous disaster, and I think you should, focus on helping to fix that if you have.
I mean, the idea these are red states and Obama doesn't care is silly because, frankly, politically it's becoming a major liability for the Obama administration, the mismanagement of these oil spills. So I don't think that that's the argument.
No, it's
a lack of coordination.
They're pointing out it's probably incompetence, not anything intentional, John.
In my book, I talk extensively about how energy is politicized. And with all respect, I believe that the politics of energy is playing out here in ways that are going to hurt the entire nation. This administration does not like oil. It does not like hydrocarbons. And we now have one of the worst possible instances of hydrocarbons run amok. You see them, smell them, taste them, touch them. They're all over the place here. It's a total mess. And because the politics of energy are such an important part of the political cycle, those who are part of the hydrocarbon business are now being negatively impacted.
And it is an important part of the electoral cycle, but they are clearly going to wait on the 6-month drilling moratorium until what? After November elections. Why? So they can restart drilling when no one's paying attention. That doesn't strike me as a conspiracy.
I mean, the idea that anti-oil is a bit excessive. Obama had reduced some of those restrictions to offshore drilling just before this kind of problem because you realize we have to rely on that, and then this spill occurred, and now you have to rethink the entire policy, right? And it was a mistake of BP of trying to be cheap on cost and creating a $20 billion disaster for themselves, right? For short-termism in terms of cost cutting.
I mean, when you have Palin actually saying that Obama is too close to the oil companies, I mean, clearly we've got...
we got the code word now from... he's used the Palin word. Are you going to use Glenn Beck next,
I won't,
Dan?
I promise. I'm staying away from that.
Upper East Side, right?
No.
Really? Where?
West Village.
West Village.
Okay, sorry. Man, you are dyed in the wool, dude. Anyway. You have more for me?
John, the future of BP? A lot of theories about who might invest a large portion of capital in the company. Are they going to be state-run down the road? What do you think is going to happen to them? Bankruptcy? What?
Well, I think they're obviously in a bad patch, and they need money from wherever they can get it. They'll either get it from asset sales or from special investors. I think it's a smart move to get some special investors in there so they can tap that resource base until they know the total size of the cleanup bill. But I don't think this is the end of BP. They have too many fine assets all over the world. They made some human errors in this case. It's horrible that what happened, but they still produce almost 4 million barrels a day. And for the sake of that portfolio, I think they're going to try to preserve it every way they can.
Does the judge's ruling on that moratorium, how aggressively does Obama come back with an appeal if they do that?
Oh, I think they'll be very aggressive because this has now become principle. This is the boot on the foot, on the neck of the industry, and they will want to see so many, new regulations that come about as if the entire industry blew out every well in the Gulf. Remember, there's one well in 40 years, 35,000 wells drilled, that has blown out. It's unforgivable that this well has blown out. But the fact of the matter is the industry has learned to operate safely. All of the rigs were inspected after the blowout. They all passed inspection. And to suggest this is not a politicized effort to somehow constrain the industry because gas prices are low. If gas prices were high, it would be a totally different situation.
That was a third of the speech was at least a third of the speech was spent on the future, not on even closer to a half. Is it, John? Do you know? Is it true that Bush immediately waived the Jones Act after Katrina? Is that true?
I think it was within a matter of days. It was a public announcement that the Jones Act was waived to get all the help that could be gotten into this region.
And to stick it to the unions at the same time, I guess.
There are hundreds of thousands of people who don't have jobs in that region. We can put some of those people at work, pass some law that says let's clean up. That's something we should be doing. We're not doing. Let's start also hiring our own workers. We can also need some foreign workers. I'm not against it, but tons of people without jobs, and we're doing nothing about it.
Before we go, John, you still think relief wells are on track for August?
Yeah, I saw a statistic yesterday where the first well is down around 17,000 feet, getting very close. So that's good news. The second one around 13,000 feet. So I hope that they can actually come in sooner than August.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to at least put that part of the story, bring it to a close, and then move forward with, from there. John, good. You're fired up. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you.
John Hofmeister.
All right, up next, we're going to get some parting shots from our guest host. You're on camera.